Hello there. Welcome back to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we revamped our whole island's train network. We upgraded to Vehicle Parts 3 and built our first mega vehicles. We added and subtracted a couple train lines here and there. We tidied up a bunch of tracks to improve the flow of traffic, and we built the start of a nice little train museum to celebrate our first coal train. If you've got any ideas for decorations, feel free to post them in the comments. But what are we going to focus on today? Today, we're finally going to tackle food. Our population has been capped at 3,600 for a while now, which has meant that we can't run our base at its fullest potential already. See, for example, our entire research facility. But it's also preventing us from expanding into new industries until we do something about it. It's actually not a food supply issue per se. We're definitely not providing all of the unity-boosting luxuries that we could, but nobody's starving. Now, adding more pops might strain that food supply, but the real issue is that expanding our settlement in any direction is going to push its footprint into one of the adjacent industries. So this is going to force us to rebuild something anyways. So it might as well be farming so that we don't encounter food supply issues in the future. So the good news is that since we've kicked this can down the road for so long, at this point we can actually afford to build a proper forever setup that will last us the rest of the game. We're going to build a dozen or so farms out in this direction, process all the raw crops into intermediaries like flour and sugar, and produce finished goods like bread, sausages, and cake. We'll also produce semi-industrial products like ethanol and canola oil, and turn our excess of all of these crops into fuel gas. The good news is that we're very full up on fertilizer and the ingredients to make more of it, so the very fertilizer-intensive process of getting a dozen or so farms up to max fertility should be a breeze. The other thing we have going for us is that we just revamped our entire train network last episode, so train transport from this area is actually going to be pretty straightforward as well. Now, to set expectations properly here, this is going to be a very long build. It is a huge system that is going to take a long time to design, build, and get up to cruising altitude. It's likely going to take all of this space at least. So given that, I'm probably going to skip over decent chunks of game time rather than time-lapsing. In fact, as you might be able to tell, I have let the game run a little bit already in order to get some terraforming completed, giving us some space to work. But don't worry, I'll make sure that we tour the build in stages along the way and explain the thought process and logic in the overly detailed manner to which you've become accustomed. Let's get into it. We'll start with the farming layout itself. I said a dozen or so of these greenhouse 2s, but really we're just going to jam as many of them out here as we can. We'll be constrained, as we know, by the requirement to place the farms themselves on dirt surface. No problem though, we can use this rocky area for food processing anyways. But we'll keep this same general mirrored layout, running our water and fertilizer pipes up this central spine, and then spitting out our crops, both flat and loose, along the edges, and send them down this way towards the processing area, which I'm envisioning in here, basically the leftover space where we've run out of dirt to build rows of farms. Let's see how many we can fit. Yeah, it looks like 14, which, man, I hope that's enough, huh? I think it should be. Our fertilizer can go here, and we will run water from out here. Now, if you look at the rough historical water demand for our farms, mid-30s up to 40, depending on the crop, right? So if we do, call it 40 times 14 just to be safe, 560. It's a decent amount of water that we're going to need. One of these thermal desalinators at its most high volume recipe produces 78 water. So roughly 8 of these will give us 600-ish with a little bit of a buffer. That's a nice convenient number because each of them takes 12 steam. So as we've done, for example, out here, 1 boiler and 4 of these, each with their own 1-to-1 seawater pump, 108 in, is probably the play. And I think we're okay. So just reserving a bit of space here. This will be, I'm sure, enough room for water. Now, at the end, we're going to be digesting all of our leftover crops into fuel gas in anaerobic digesters. It would be great if we could run off of that fuel here, wouldn't it? Because if we can just do CO2, we can immediately capture that and not have to worry about processing pollution, right? We're actually going to end up having to capture CO2 anyways, or one of the downstream processes. So I don't mind if that happens here as well. Now that said, that's a lot of fuel gas. 144 fuel gas is significantly more than we've produced so far. Now, of course, we're about to make a lot of it. It's only our excess crops, and it's going to take a minute. So it might not be a bad idea to at least have as a backup out here some coal power. Okay, that's farm placement and water production. What else do we need to be thinking about here? It's probably time to transition to thinking about food processing. So for potatoes, there's only two things you can really do with them. One, provide them raw to the settlement, as we do today, and two, use them to make these newly unlocked snacks. But it's not as efficient as doing snacks from corn, which we're also going to want to make. So in some cases, potato being, I think, the simplest example, we're probably just going to export it raw, with a little bit of overflow helping to make animal feed, and overflow from that going into fuel gas. However, other crops, like, as we said, corn, we can turn into snacks, and this is the best way to do that. We could also turn it into corn mash and then into ethanol, which, by the way, is how we're making the little bit of ethanol we currently make out here to make medical supplies. But the other thing about ethanol is you can make it from sugar. I don't want to spend hydrogen on it, but you can technically also make it with hydrogen. But sugar is a processed version of sugarcane. So water and corn makes corn mash. Water and sugarcane makes sugar. Now, sugar we can use in a bunch of stuff. It's also part of cake, which is the other snack that you can provide. It can make, as we said, ethanol. And here's some of the CO2 capture I was talking about. We can also use it to make antibiotics, which we can mix with our medical supplies to take them up to medical supplies 2, which will provide a better health boost for citizens. So there's actually very little that we would do with corn that we wouldn't prefer to do with sugar. So for corn, similarly to potatoes, despite the fact that there's some flexibility, we're going to make it into snacks, but then that's it. We'll export some of it raw because you absolutely can directly eat that, but then the rest of it will go to animal feed and digesters. Okay, so let's sketch out that processing work in more detail. I think about this in 2 steps. The first is what you might call intermediate goods processing. This is turning the raw crop, like wheat, into a usable good, like flour, that is then used as an input into something else later down the value chain. There is no other use beyond recycling into animal feed or fuel gas for wheat, so we need to turn all of the wheat that we produce into flour. From here, there's a second step, and it can go in several directions. Right now, what we do is we turn all of our flour into bread, but we want to use flour also to make cake and to make sausages. These I think of as finished good processing, so to speak. We already have one of those out here, so let's do like this, just to illustrate. I don't know the ratios that we're going to want of these buildings, which is fine. We're going to have to dial it in based on demand. We're not going to get this right from the start, and we're not going to bother trying. What we're going to do is build modules that are future-proof so that we can scale up if and when we need to. So, what else lives in this intermediate range? Well, some of the other stuff we can do in a mill, actually. So, let's grab another. We can make cooking oil. Let's talk about cooking oil. This could be made from soybeans or canola, but it's twice as productive to make from canola. there's also nothing else you can do with canola, and you can't digest it or turn it into animal feed. So it's a little bit more difficult to deal with excess. You certainly don't want to burn anything, but it's way more productive to make cooking oil. Soybean, we can use for tofu as well, but we can, if we have excess, dispose of it in a productive way by turning it into animal feed or fuel gas. So in an ideal world, we would make exactly as much canola as we need to make cooking oil and save soybeans for other uses. Well, how much cooking oil do we need? Well, baking unit makes cake, right? We just talked about that. Food processor makes snacks. This also goes over here. Again, we can make this with potato if we want, but it's less efficient to do so. We can also turn it into gasoline, which is an interesting way, sort of a challenge run concept for you to fuel your vehicles. In the future, we can mix it with diamonds to make diamond paste. Diamond paste, along with some other fun stuff, goes into lenses, which is a component of electronics 4. We're not there yet, but it might make sense to have a little bit of cooking oil as an export product. Now, I said again that the difficulty with canola is that it's hard to get rid of excess, but it's not hard to get rid of excess cooking oil. Not that we want to make a lot of it, but if we need to, we can productively dispose of it by mixing it with some ethanol, which, as I mentioned, we're going to be making from sugar in reasonably high volumes, I imagine, on site already. And we can always use diesel. So that'll be the way that we aim to make our cooking oil, is via canola. We won't make a ton of extra, but we will have a little bit of an overflow facility to handle whatever excess comes out of this system. Did I put one of these down yet? I don't think I did. Oh, that's right. I was using this one as an illustration. Okay, great. All right, what else do we want to put here? So I think about tofu actually is going in this step as well. So tofu, because it's made essentially from raw crops, right? We can make, by mixing with, a tiny bit of sulfur and limestone, we can turn soybeans directly into tofu, which we will export, and a little bit of extra animal feed. This little bit of extra animal feed is a feature of pretty much everything in this intermediate processing step, less so over here. Snacks make biomass as a byproduct. That's about it. I suppose we'll do sugar processing, right? How do we make sugar? Food processor here as well. Yeah. However you want to categorize it, we definitely also need to make ethanol from that sugar. I would say it probably, in my mind at least, belongs over here, but it's clearly intermediate. And then we're going to need just a whole bunch of overflow animal feed processing, because we're also going to need to put down quite a few. I don't know exactly how many yet, but quite a few of these animal farms. So we have one of these already, and we barely provide it with enough animal feed from our, it doesn't even work from our extra, from coming off of these processes elsewhere in our base already. We have to supplement it, lower priority, but whenever we need to, we supplement it by digesting excess crops. So we'll probably need to do that, because that's true with just one chicken farm over there, and we're going to try to scale this up. As a reminder, we don't make anywhere near enough eggs or meat. These numbers go to 0 very quickly. We just get little bursts every once in a while, which we'll take, but it's not enough. So this may not be enough. We're going to find out. That's also true because eggs, sure, we can put in with some other stuff to make cake, but we also need to make meat. Now, meat comes from chicken carcasses, which happen essentially when we get to overflow of chickens. I mean, you can trigger it at any point, but it's most efficient in my mind if you can wait to do so right at the top. This will give us meat, which we export raw. I guess counterintuitively, I suppose this is packaged refrigerated meat. And then also these meat trimmings. Now, these meat trimmings we can turn into sausages. Also takes flour. You see, flour is needed in a lot of stuff, right? Whew, okay. I think these are all the production types that we're going to need. I have, as I said, no idea what the right volume is for any of these, nor therefore any idea what the layout looks like. But we're going to start and we'll arrange them so that we can expand them as necessary. And we'll make sure that we have sorter logic that allows us to run all of the excess to animal feed. And the last, I guess, building we should add is, it's going to be a few of these, the anaerobic digester. So again, this will be sort of downstream, based only on excess, but this will accept everything we don't find a use for along the way. We're probably gonna have, like, I don't know, a dozen or two of these. But like I said, we'll start small, but leave room to expand. We're also gonna need a train station for export, and that train station is gonna have to export a few different goods types. So we'll make sure to sketch that out as well. It might break into a couple different train stations, but let's see how it goes. So the first thing I'm gonna do is connect up various pipes. We'll need to get a train station in here for the fertilizer as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be here. We could run a pipe over. We'll figure it out. And we're going to run all of our crops. I think we can do that on a single belt, a single very high tier belt, and certainly breaking out, alternating between the flat products and the U-shaped products. But we'll do like one vegetable, one corn, one fruit, one wheat, right? So that we're alternating the throughput. It should be okay. But if it's not, we'll add a second row, no worries. All right, I'm gonna jump into a little bit of a time lapse and I'll come back out when we have something a little bit more fully baked. Talk soon. Okay, so just checking in here quickly. Placement is evolving, but what am I actually doing? I am starting to think about the crops coming down this way and then passing along this front from one direction to the other, and then going down production lines. In the same way that at the beginning we said, well, let's just throw down 4, and if we need to expand, we will. We're gonna do something like that here too. So in each of these stages, I think a buffer will be important because these crops come out in bursts, right? And we don't want them backing up the line because that will keep others from, or other crops from being able to come through. So we want plenty of buffers in this system. This system is going to slosh a lot, so to speak. But then it'll come down, it'll be processed. It'll take a bit more water here, by the way. Another reason to have more. over here. Let's see how that goes. And then at the end, we'll have another buffer for our sort of further downstream products, right? So flour here will then go into each of the various components that it is used for, and so on and so forth. We'll make these modules next, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. So we'll have sugar out here, and we're also gonna have these so biomass we're gonna have to do something with. I think ideally we'll just burn it. And then animal feed, right? So we're gonna have to collect up all of the animal feed here from these outputs and then supplement it as necessary. We'll get to sort of the overflow setup once we finish setting up the modules. And then this is obviously just a visual organization. This is not what the train station is exactly gonna look like just because it's up against the tracks. But we'll have to think about the right way to transport all of that out there as well. I have some thoughts on that, but they're not fully crystallized yet, so I will spare you them. Right now, it's just a visual organizer to make sure that I'm tracking all of the products that we need. All right, so I'm gonna dive back into it. Just popping in to sort of explain the thinking a little bit more now that we're getting a bit more granular. So the crops come down here. I've started to actually think about which crops we're gonna put on which sides. It's a little bit much and not entirely necessary to have it such that any crop could be in either side on any farm. You'd have to run twice as many belts crossing over. If we need to make some adjustments later, we certainly can. I'm leaving a bit of room, right, to do fancy belt work if we need to, but generally speaking, of the two flat goods that we're building here, veggies and fruits, I'm just gonna do half and half. It takes a lot. We never keep up on veggies, despite the fact that we are producing them in 3, I think, of the 4 of these farms, right? And we're gonna end up using fruits in some downstream stuff too. So I think that's probably what we'll do. And we'll adjust if we need to. But I think we'll basically say there's no way we can have up to 7, 50% of 7, because we'll do crop rotation, but 50% of 7 farms has got to be enough fruit. There's no way we get on both sides doing that. Same with veggies. And we don't have to put it in all of them. We could just do some, multiple. We could do wheat and potatoes in one of them, etc. But I think it's okay to sort of keep fruit on this side and veggies on that side. Generally speaking, I think we're only gonna need 1 of these canolas. Like I said, we don't want to be making a ton of excess of this, and in fact, we have to make sure that we have a way to get rid of it. It's very efficient at what it does. So that's, I think we just need the 1 here. And then the rest of this is 3 wheats and 3 potatoes. Potatoes are just pretty inefficient, meaning we kind of have to make a lot of them to keep up. Wheat is great because it turns into flour and then that turns into bread, and bread's very efficient, right? So our bread demand right now is 12 versus our potato demand is 50. And, we have to, of course, process that wheat into bread, but it's even better than a 1-to-1 ratio there. So that's going to be plenty from a bread perspective of wheat, but we also use that flour, right, in a few downstream items, sausages, cake, and so on. So I think if anything, it's more likely we'll end up going 4-to-2, but we'll play around with the ratios. That's a first pass. Wheat and potatoes on this side as our U-shaped goods, along with canola. I think we'll do 1 train station over here and 1 over there, or something like that. It's enough that I don't want it to all be on 1 big train every time. That feels a little excessive and it's gonna be difficult for traffic. We'll figure it out, but this is the first pass. We can always rearrange this, but finally, as crops come in, for example, to trace the fruit, comes in underneath, but it does the same thing in all these, goes into a balancer. The first thing we do is make sure, with a buffer, that we have enough fruit for our downstream uses of it, which is really just cake, right? I'm pretty sure that's the only thing we're making with it. Yep. So as long as we have enough for cake, then the overflow comes into the second splitter. Then, and this will take a while, we fill our export. So fruit is also consumed raw, just like veggies, right? For the vitamin need. We want to make sure that that gets over to the settlement. If that's full, and again, that's going to take a while because we're going to have a big buffer there, then the rest of this goes on down this way to what will eventually be the digesters. So this is overflow. Same logic generally holds over here for potatoes, for example. This one's even simpler though, because we filter the potatoes and they do one of two things. In fact, we could even move this over and save ourselves some belts. But the point is that we prioritize for export directly to the settlement. And if there's any leftover after that, we just throw it onto, this is now a merged line directly into, same thing, the digester setup. Just like they're merged over here, coming out of the farms, they'll be merged running back into the digesters. We just filter it for now. Finally over here, same thing, wheat. We prioritize, hey, do we have enough for our flour production with a buffer? If so, excess down this way. We'll do animal feed as a conditional branch off before we get to the digesters, but that's only true for some of these goods, so we'll sort those out along the way. Otherwise, they'll also get digested. Finally, canola, all the way over here, because, well, it's easier to run a pipe out wherever we need to go, but also this is the one I'm worried about backing up. So I want it to be the last one out here, hopefully so that we see a little bit more backup if we need to. And this is what I mean about if we need to, we can continue on to the other side. But ideally we won't. This filter is, as it's currently drawn, superfluous, right? It should be the last product that we expect to see here. All right, I'm gonna do this, but on the other side, and then we'll probably have to get into some further downstream processing. So I'll dive back into it. All right, checking in again, and we've got this side as well. So on the flat side, it'll just be veggies. Comes in here, priority to export, excess down the hatch. First thing we filter out here is corn. We do keep a little bit of corn, by the way, for snacks, right? So we need to make sure that that is retained first, but once that is full, then the excess deprioritized comes out here. From here, we then export raw, any overflow down the hatch. Sugarcane. Priority to a storage buffer, which feeds into all the sugarcane processing to make sugar. Any overflow off of that down the hatch. It also spits out biomass, which we're going to have to handle downstream. Last one here, soybeans. As usual, priority to production with a buffer, excess meets up out here, and away it goes. Output here, tofu, animal feed. And we are going to make sure that we bring in limestone and sulfur. It's not that much though, so I don't mind doing this by truck if we have to. It's not like we exactly have a train export for sulfur. We do for limestone, but I just don't think it's worth it for all of, 6 limestone a minute if all 4 of these are running. not too worried about that. I think we'll let it be for now. I don't know exactly where we'll put these. We'll see. But you can see it sort of emerging. We're just going to give shape to the rest of this as we sort of build our way down the supply chain. And we'll figure it out from there. So the next thing to do will be to take all of those intermediate goods, like flour, and turn them into other stuff. So we'll figure out what these all look like here. Again, trying to leave room to build these with sort of the humility of knowing that I don't know how many of each of these we're going to need. So leaving room to add more as necessary. So I'll try to do that in the last step as well, particularly for this stuff where it's like snacks we haven't built at all. And I don't know what the demand is. It doesn't tell us what the demand is unless we've supplied it at least once, right? So for some of these, I can eyeball it. We don't always have eggs, but we know what it takes. For others of these, we're kind of going to have to guess and adjust, and that's fine. So yeah, going to get that next stage done, and we'll check in again soon. Hey, checking in here, I think we have the buildings. I think we have their rough placement. Decent chance we end up tweaking things. A lot of belts, obviously. And there's a decent amount of space here still, which, like I said, we want to reserve some so that we can expand if and when that becomes necessary. But it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to be able to have some truck access if we were able to ramp over some of this stuff. So pretty decent chance I start tweaking some stuff along the way. We'll also start by building the farms when we get there and, sort of build along the value chain as it pops up. So we'll have a chance to adjust along the way as well. What do we still need to do? We need to do the sort of overflow setup, right? So we need to take all of our excess crops, anything that isn't processed by our various machines, making our various things, and handle them so they don't back the system up, right? And so that'll start with a little bit of animal feed making. But anything beyond that, and anything that can't be used, like vegetables or fruit, will need to be digested. And that's out here. And this is all the stuff. So we need to make a bunch of these, and we have all of our balancers in place. We need to get those belts out here. Plus the water. I do think we're going to end up making salt locally. It's just a bunch of stuff that needs it. We're right here. We might as well. So I'll probably make that as part of the desalination setup. So I'll make desal and overflow / waste processing as well. Back in a moment. All right, so welcome back. I think this is going to work for our water in and waste out. I'm realizing I've missed one set of pipes here real quick, but the point is generally fine that all of our extra crops will come down this way. Let's start over here. So for example, right, we have excess corn. We've sent it to our buffer so that we can make snacks out of it. We've sent it here so that we can export it as a raw crop. And yet there's extra still. It's gonna come down here along this path. And then if it is a product that you can turn into animal feed, it will get sorted to go into here. Now, why is this so complicated? Well, what if we have enough animal feed? What if we don't need these running? Well, that would back up, and the corn would back up all the way along this entire line, causing troubles potentially far upstream. So if we're full on animal feed, the deprioritized output is to continue along all the way down here and get digested. Similarly, on this side, if you are potato try to be exported, but if there's excess, you go along this line here. At that point, you're joined up with wheat, I guess. Yeah, here. And both of those, although just to be safe and future-proof, both of those will get filtered to run to the same sorting mechanism over here. So again, it'll come in and it'll try to get made into animal feed. But if that doesn't work, we still send it out and around. And if there's anything coming off of this line that is not something we can make into animal feed, we send it into that line directly. All of that comes out here, including Overflow flat products, neither of which can be made into animal feed, and they get digested. This should be a decent amount of capacity, and we don't really need it right away because it's going to take a while to fill up all those storages, right? Crops take a while to produce in the first place. But once we do, we'll have a little bit of manure, compost, that we're going to have to dump. So we'll have to do that. But we'll also hook up this fuel gas to a decently sized storage over here, which will be what we try to run our desalination off of. Because we can just run that CO2 out here. We're also piping in some CO2 from the fermentation tanks over here, so it's easy enough. We'll have to keep this empty. That's okay. We're actually starting to go through those. We've stabilized. We're not adding more storage. Pretty good. So that's all of the logic. I think it holds. Like I said, it's still absolutely, it's a mess. And we got to figure out, I mean, we're gonna have to run a train like this. This station is not permanent. This is just to dump stuff, so no problem. And it'll be a while until we make enough of this that it's time to send on a train, but this will be a decently sized train. And they'll have to figure out what exactly we want to do over there for drop off. Same thing on this side, except we're not even connected to a train line yet. But we do need to have some level of trucks still being able to access because, well, we have to bring over, and I haven't even connected these yet, sulfur limestone plastic, and take out biomass. Right now, this is the only place I'm confident is accessible to trucks. I just don't want to necessarily commit to it yet. But I think that's probably what it's going to have to be. And we'll need to connect up the water here as well, I'm realizing. Okay, so I've got like 30 seconds of extra work I still need to do here, connecting water and those last fuel pipes. And then I think we'll just start building farms and I suppose the water setup, but it'll be time to unpause finally. So talk very, very soon. All right, that should do it. So where are we starting? Well, by unpausing, and I suppose allowing all of this to get built. And adjusting that real quick. We'll let them keep dumping, although where is a great question. I don't know how they're getting anywhere. We'll deal with it later. Terraforming is finally no longer the main priority, so very good. All right, so now we will need to, I suppose, get fertilizer set up over here. So where are we going to make that train? I don't mind running a pipe for this. I don't think we need to get the train in here, but I'm cognizant that this area is going to be a little trafficy. We're definitely going to have to add a bunch of crossings in here too. Let's zoom out for a minute. we're coming from the refinery, where we'll also need a station. Probably going to come along the main path here. I suppose we'll probably also want to add this right-hand turn too. And then we'll come out here. I bet we could actually get in here and then back on the main line. Let's sketch that out. I think that's our move, but let's see. We'll build all that, and then we'll need a fertilizer export station. The answer's probably coming up like this and then circling back around. So we've set it not to leave the refinery until it's full. And let's say don't request it here unless you're empty. Finally, of course, trying to think. The water is not going to work unless and until we have some power going. And we're obviously not going to run off of fuel gas until we have excess crops, which is going to be quite some time. But we do have some fuel gas, so I suppose we could ask our trucks to bring over a bit. Let's see if we can get away with not using this. That would be nice. That's gonna be a problem. All right, so yeah, we're out of people, right? So where can we skosh back even a little bit more? Let's see. Well, we've paused our research, so we actually don't need any paper production whatsoever. So everything here, and that's a half decent chunk. We can probably dial back on this. For now. we'll keep an eye and see if we need to pause anything else here. We are going to need to move our transformer while I'm thinking about it, because this is where we're going to build pops. That's free. Something else I suppose we could do to free up a few people would be to upgrade these. Actually, I suppose if we've paused our world mines, which we have, we can pause the cargo ship and its entire supporting dock. That's a good chunk. If we really need to. We've got quite a uranium stockpile. So you know what? Let's take advantage of that too. Really do want to get a throughway for trucks under some ramps in here. Believe that it's possible. I also believe that it's necessary. Okay. That's a lot better. And honestly, it was a nice little do-over for a couple things that I didn't love anyways, so. I'm definitely still seeing a couple odds and ends here. Not sure what this is. If I had to bet, probably biomass. Yeah, I think that's right. Have to do something about that eventually. But we'll get there. Good, this is coming along. We are really going through the parts 3, huh? This was full. Too bad. Hey, that's what it's there for. And we are hanging in there population-wise, which is good. And we got a little Unity. Well, we don't have the parts, so maybe we'll just take a quick loan. It's been a minute since we overdid it on that front, huh? Wow, that's not a lot at all. I guess because we were full, we haven't produced a lot. Now that's too bad. I think we can afford to upgrade a few trucks into probably haul trucks are going to be our best bang for our buck right now, impact-wise. Let's do that. It is going to take some parts. What do we need to make 16? We need 2 of these guys going, which means 1 of these and 1 of these. But that's it. That should help our truck network. Hey, there's salt. I don't think we need to prioritize salt quite yet. And that is, in fact, fuel gas. Now we just need some water. Just a little bit to jumpstart it. Hey, look. Veggies. We got crops flowing. They are not efficient. They are very dry, but they are flowing. So our system works. And that is some fruit. Decent amount of wheat as well, which means once the water's up and running, we'll be able to do bread. You are still missing water, which means I'm sure there's a pipe issue. Oh yeah, that's right. We have it coming straight from there, which means we are going to need to run that back around, at least temporarily, but I suppose why not? And there we go. They fire. sending out steam, which should spin up this whole set. And they'll like immediately shut down because they're full on brine or something, but it'll be a start. We do need to have an overflow with some dumps. Anyways, suppose we might as well make that. Well, that'll certainly drain that quickly enough. Look at that. Big truck. These guys make short work. $234. Not bad. And this is really pretty close here. All the water seems to be taking. As long as we can keep up manually bringing over fuel gas, which is quite a caveat, but let's see. I think it's okay to release the water to the base. And when we confirm that water is flowing, we'll connect fertilizer, making its way all the way down. Great, so his irrigation tank at the very end, brilliant, is working. So this is going to take quite the hit, but again, we should be able to keep up as long as, yep, and there's the problem, as long as we can keep up on fuel gas. I think what we might do is start to route back some of this ammonia. Ugly pipe, temporary. We just want to make sure that we have ammonia to make fertilizer to make up for this stock. It's a big reason we were keeping this, right? So this is where we need digesters. And since we're, feeling it on the fuel gas front, it might very well make sense to get that going. What do you need? It's rubber again. Right. Let's just do it. Let's follow along. Make sure that our logic tracks. And it does. It's being filtered along this way. Now we would prioritize animal feed, but I'm not going to activate that quite yet. There it goes. Comes along here. And digestion. And there it goes. So this will start to generate a little bit of fuel gas for us. We are, yep, brilliant. Similarly jammed up on this side. So let's test that logic as well. This one is not an animal feed divert. So it should see this filter and it should ignore it. And it does. Then it will continue down this lift and merge up into this same belt. Corn is an animal feed, but we've got some export buffer to build before we'll turn it into anything else. Good. So far the logic that we've written is working. You like to see that. You also like to see a little bit of fuel gas running. We've built actually a decent amount of this basic infrastructure, so it'll be time soon, I think, to go for these sort of intermediate processing bits. I'm personally going to take a short break. You won't notice anything, but I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I let the game run a little bit before turning the camera back on to pay down our rubber and construction part 3 loans and find a few more places to pull back on employment. We're running a lot of less relevant stuff on half capacity, and we'll get a ton of employment back when we clear out our old food production footprint. So just a temporary measure to navigate the transition. I've also cranked up our fertilizer production over here. And then just now, let it start to flow out to the farms. They have not yet received all of it. They're working their way up to get to that max fertility number. And we're doing that actually maybe counterintuitively because our fuel gas production is really rough. And that's because we're running this entire desalination setup off of fuel gas, and that's starting to have like cascading issues elsewhere in the base for cement production, for sure, since we run those on rotary kilns, as well as over here for hydrogen, right? Because we make that from excess fuel gas as well. So the thing is, more fertilizer equals more crops equals, especially as we start to trigger our overflows here soon, equals more digestion, equals more fuel gas. So fingers crossed that that acceleration will be helpful, but let's see how much of an impact it has. Regardless, I think it's time to start building these downstream food productions. We'll build the start of each module rather than one module at a time. We want to test everything out, get everything flowing, at least a little bit, and then we'll scale up each of them over time as we dial in our demand for each. So let's do that real quick. Okay, so I've basically said to our trucks, go ahead and build everything, including all the belts and pipes, but let's just build one of each building. But all of our storages and so on and so forth, will be built as well. The one thing we're not going to do quite yet is trigger the entire chicken farm cascade. I want to make sure, well, I want to see how we're doing on the animal feed production first, and I do still want to make sure that we're sending some crops to excess for fuel gas, again, just to navigate the transition. But let's see how that goes. We're still going to have to put a couple belts here and there. I think we still have a biomass belt that needs sorted, and these input belts, although let's build the storages. I might yet move them. I'll do that in a moment. But this is plenty for our truck network to work on in the meanwhile. And then the other thing we should do while that's starting to go is think about our train stations. So I actually do like them where they are. I think this works, especially as we've continued to sort of chip away at the space here. I think we have room for a turnaround here, and then this is obviously also pretty much right on our main line. So we need to do two things then. We need to connect these train stations up to this main line. As I said, we're already mostly there in some of the places, not the others. And the second thing we'll need to do is build a destination station. Well, the first one's real easy, so one moment, and I'll do that real quick. So here we go. There's a quick turnaround loop here with the station facing in this direction. I'll call this a terminus, but there's a solid turnaround here. On this side, I think we're just going to do a one-way track for now. We can always expand this later. That comes out here, and then this will also turn back around, but I'm going to give these folks a little bit longer because we're not going to run trains quite yet, a little bit longer to clear this area out. So that's that. Now the question becomes, after we connect here and come back down, after we come out here, where are we going to drop all of this off? Because in an ideal world, a train station would be right next to the markets, right, that are taking the input and putting whichever of these things it is, corn, potatoes, whatever, directly into the settlement. That's great. It won't be here for the same reasons that we aren't expanding our settlement here. There's already something there. That's also true here and here. Our markets are currently here, but we're going to grow up this direction, right? And in order to keep from having to deal with this problem again in the future, we should probably keep sort of the new northern edge of the settlement open for future expansion whenever we need it, right? So really what that means is we have like this area for markets or this area for markets. And process of elimination, this isn't a great spot because that's where our research facility is, right? Over here is probably the answer, and that'll work, but not immediately, obviously, because we do still need this food during the transition. So I think what we might have to do is build a temporary drop-off station over here and have trucks run to our markets, at least until we're able to clear out this area. Not the end of the world. We'll make the adjustment afterwards as we need to, but I'm going to try to throw in some tracks. I imagine, I don't know, maybe around here, and then they come and meet up over in the refinery. Let's see. I'll be right back. All right, check this out. So most of our food comes from this side. It's going to come up along this track. The other rest of it is going to come down along here. We have to pass through this area. I really don't want to make this more trafficy than it already is by asking it to pass through here. That's going to lengthen the trips of both our mining trains and the food trains themselves. So we're going to do a little bit of elevated track, which will also be kind of fun on its own merits, I think. But it'll come along through here, down this way, leaving a little bit of space for a crossing still. But we come down here and enter a pair of train stations in this area. Crossing here, and then they meet up the rest of the way again, and return back through this recirculation route. They'll split back off here. I think this should work. It'll be kind of fun to have another new spine, I guess, for train tracks. We haven't really built a big thoroughfare like this before, but I could see this motion being helpful in the future too. Let's see. Like I said, ultimately the most efficient thing, not that we have to do it, but the most efficient thing will be to move this all in here, directly feeding into markets in the future. But we have to navigate that transition, so let's do it. I will build all of this now. Oh, not this though. Whew. Lord knows we have enough plastic. Let's check in over here, see how we're doing. Good. A lot of this got built, but then some of it didn't. Looks like we have some parts issues. Yeah, so of course, fuel gas being a problem means that we are out of cement production. How is this going? Not terribly, and this is built up pretty well too. So I think we're going to stop allowing delivery here and and say that you have to run off of whatever we're able to make over here. But the good news, wow, yeah, is that we've got a decent amount here. These things work really slowly, unfortunately. So I think we're probably going to have to extend this. For now, we'll just try to push through it, but obviously we're backed way up, which is not what we want. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to extend this array. I did say a dozen or two at the very beginning of this video, and this is only 8. Let's see if this speeds things up at all. We'll check back here in a moment. Welcome back. I think we've managed to catch up on all of our backlogged crops, and the good news is, check this out. So much fuel gas that it's in fact okay to export it to the rest of the base, which is great. That is helping us to catch up on cement here, and even funneling back a little bit to the refinery, which is helping us catch up on everything else. So, wonderful news. Let's check in on the rest of this production too. As you can see, the beginnings of our flour is coming out. Flour is flowing along here to bakeries. And once we set up the meat, which is what's required for eggs, we'll also have cake, because cooking oil seems to be working just fine, and in fact is starting to back up a little bit, and this is a concern. So maybe we'll right away go ahead and build this second one here. We do have a bit of a storage buffer, which is good, but we should also start to try to consume it. And then we'll think about, you know, how we deal with overflow interacting with the ethanol system when we need to. But a good start here, for sure. I think the other thing we'll do is go ahead and at least get part of the animal feed overflow system working. I just want to make sure that it's, you know, in motion, given that we are definitely backing up still a bit on our U-shaped crops. So all good, but let's get that going a little bit faster. I even think, you know, given how much flour we need, I know we're going to need, frankly, I think we're going to need at least, let's just do all 4 of these. For flour particularly, I just think we're going to go through quite a bit of it. Every once in a while we have to boost our single baking unit, so I know we'll need 2, and that means 2 flour here just to keep up. So I think the other 2 will also be necessary to make the various things downstream of flour too. I did sketch out most of the rest of this unit, doubling it. I've just been kind of trying to keep an eye on, like, do you think we'll be able to catch up with the boost? Is this a temporary thing, or do we really need to extend? And it's becoming more and more clear over time that we need to build the second half here, so I'll probably do that as well. So we'll check back in soon. It'll probably be time to set up the meat and then our trains for export. Talk soon. So it looks like the second set here was enough to catch us up, and we are definitely officially exporting fuel gas to the rest of the base, which is good. Our refinery could really use the help, honestly. Now, a decent part of that, though, is that there's less overflow because we turned on this animal feed priority production. So something to keep in mind, when this does fill up, that will back up again, and we may not exactly have all of that fuel gas production. But a decent amount of our crops, including all of the fruits and veggies that we're making, can't go into animal feed, along with a couple other things. So we should have a pretty steady stream, regardless, out here in the longer run. We've also connected up out here. We've got, apparently, our mills are working hard enough to consume all of the wheat. We actually may need to rebalance away from potatoes, as we maybe previewed earlier. But we've got canola, we are in a pretty good place here. I think it's time to do meat because we have snacks going even. And that's really the last little bit here. Need our limestone to drop off. We're actually in the middle of, that's a good prompt. We have finished this limestone mine. And in fact, it's probably reasonable to start filling it in. Pretty neat. This was a long time coming. So good to see that. That means we can, I think that's this one. Yep, we can delete this. And as soon, yeah, let's just go ahead and scrap this. This whole setup is pretty much done, which is great. We'll redo these in a bit. I'm not going to prioritize it quite yet, but that is now something we can do. Cool stuff. All right, let's get some chickens going. And in fact, I think what we'll do is probably build all of this right away. All right, our farms are doing, well, they're built. Let's see how we can get them to do. I'm hoping I didn't just move the same 50 around. I kind of did. So here's what we're gonna do. Over here, remove all. Done. And in fact, we might as well start cleaning up over here. The cleanup begins. Let's start building at least some trains. We will certainly do this better, and with the train station in the future, this is an inefficient, but like has to happen, quick fix. We need to have limestone on the map, so it goes. Our first food train on its way out. Heading along. These old mines are really filling in too. This area is flat and wide open, and it's going to be very helpful for us in the next couple of episodes since we got over to the gold. Let's make our second line. Let's go. And in fact, let's go quickly. This all seems very caught up by now, so gonna save some pops there. The water, working great, by the way. All the salt we need, no problem. Still, I think enough fuel gas, even though we're through sort of the initial surge. We'll keep an eye on that. But this is plenty of water as a buffer as well. And this coal backup seems to be unnecessary, which is great because we didn't set up anywhere to drop it off. So, good news there. Cool, so let's tidy up back here a little bit. I think we are going to need a second copy of probably of each train, if I had to guess. It's pretty high volume stuff and it's not a short trip, so I would say probably start with the bigger fella. How's he doing? He is full up on everything but sugar, which is great. We don't actually need extra sugar right now. that is in the future for antibiotics, which I just don't think we should necessarily make out here. Probably need a second copy of the second train as well. So I suppose we might as well add that to the queue. Well, folks, I've got bad news. I was trying to figure out why our steel wasn't looking so great, and then I realized we kind of undermined our ore sorter. So, gonna go ahead and have to take care of that real quick, aren't we? All right, well, that's that resolved, hopefully. Take a minute to clean up, but so be it. A little low on employment as a result. Let's go ahead and start taking these fellas out. Then we'll have to make our market upgrades, sort of expand up this way, but it'll be time. Let's take them out. Man, that's so satisfying. Okay, it's time. Let's do this. Tofu, eggs, corn, meat. These go. Build it. And in fact, sketch this here. The other thing we can do that's fantastic is we have these market twos. They can hold 2 goods. So we said, for example, corn. Oh, I've already forgotten. What was it? That was eggs and meat is 1. Is it tofu and corn? I think that's right. There we go. So let's get those going. And these 2 will replace... Do we have 2 breads? Yeah, we do. 3 breads. Potato and vegetable. Let's say bread, vegetable, bread, potato. Build both of those. Once they're up, we can remove all of these. Wow, yeah, that's great. Cool, cool, cool. We should also probably relocate the recyclables. Yeah, this whole thing is gonna have to change, isn't it? That's okay. Look at that, corn's here. Tofu. Seems like it's already being eaten. Bread, potatoes. Cool, cool, cool. So that means we can get the rest of these out of here. Uh-oh, not enough fuel gas. Let's see if we make enough elsewhere to make up for this. I am concerned we do not. All right, so here's the solution. Tired of excess naphtha, not enough fuel gas. We're gonna crack it, right? Little excess hydrogen, never hurt anybody. We'll certainly use it elsewhere. And it fits nice and tidy. Let's see how this works. This area is all cleared up. I think we need to add some more of our markets here just to round out and make sure that we're providing everything we can. So we've already got bread, potato, bread, vegetable, meat, eggs, tofu, corn, which means how about treats cake? Or snack cake, excuse me, the treats category. And we'll need fruit and sausage, I think are the last 2. So There we go. Let's build these two. I don't think we need these. And then we should be good. Letting the buffers build up a little bit, right? And things are looking pretty good overall here. Sausages is the one piece that we aren't perfectly supplying so far, and that's because it's the furthest downstream in the meat and animal products part, and we are still scraping by on animal feed. Now, if you think about the way that we set up our system, right, we expect that until our primary buffers are full, right, we don't have overflow of basic crops to turn into animal feed, right? And similarly, after that, we don't have as much as we eventually expect to for digesting into fuel gas. So we're still charging up slowly but surely, but we're fundamentally there, I would say. This will get more comfortable over time. The one other consequence, right, of not having as much fuel gas as we want is that our water system hasn't been running full speed. And so why am I saying that with a large buffer here? I'm saying that because as a temporary, hopefully, stopgap measure, I did end up rerouting some of the overflow from our water main backup over here into these farms. So I just sort of flipped the direction of the pipes in this area to make sure that we were getting everything that we could. Now that said, looking at, obviously there's been a minor impact here, but looking at that, that's free water. We should probably be using that as much as we can without destroying the reservoir. So as long as that's not a problem, I don't mind at all just running this as often as we have fuel gas for it, which again, will be more and more over time. So I think that's working out just fine. The animal feed is going to work out just fine as well. I diverted, in fact, our priority over here for things like corn, where we still have a chunk at the base already, and potatoes. I just didn't really feel like waiting for a second massive buffer to fill up before trying to get a little bit over to animal feed. So we're getting there. We're getting there. This is already better than it has been. I know you see the errors here, but I'm seeing full chickens. And I'm also seeing plenty of meat, plenty of eggs. So the sausage will come with these extra meat trimmings, but we are, I think, in a pretty good spot here. So I'm sure that I will let this run a little bit further in between episodes, but I figured it makes sense to do a nice little sort of recap and tour here because I've also started turning some stuff back on, right? We have population now since we've been able to add more housing. And in fact, let's add even more, keep it coming, right? And so I've unpaused all of the industrial stuff that we had paused here and there. I have really cranked up our diesel production, actually. But I brought back, as we needed to, actually, the timing was good. I brought back our world oil rigs and in fact have opened up a third one just to try to get a buffer going. And we've been cranking out the fertilizer over here, which is great. We've actually, in fact, started consuming some of this excess sulfur. I actually have to bring sulfur into this storage now, which is new. This was always our overflow system. So that's really good because we are really eating it up over here. I don't even really think, we're staying pretty close, right? We're targeting 140. And in most of these, I mean, it's not there, especially the further down you go, right? The less it's gotten. But we're providing as much as we can. Maybe we should add a second train. But I think we're feeling good about that production as well, especially if it eats up some of these extra resources that you can now hopefully appreciate why I've been so reticent about tossing them or trading them. This was completely full when we started this episode, right? This was extra ammonia, and wouldn't you know it, we've been running it back in to consume the heck out of it for fertilizer. We do still have some excess sulfur, and one of the things I'd love to do, although it's definitely hidden behind this final settlement here, and we can't quite afford it yet to take this battle, technology-wise, but that is, I think, where my favorite little sulfur for coal contract is, and I would love to do that in this area as well. So hopefully we'll get there soon, but that requires research, and hey, that's a great segue into why don't we turn some of this back on, right? So maybe we start with 50%. No, you know what? The whole point was to not have to worry about pops anymore. So let's do this. And inevitably, I guess we don't need the office supplies. Inevitably, we're going to be a couple short here. Well, hey, no problem. We have the space for it. Let's go out on the map and adopt a bunch. Brilliant. We still have room for 300 more. It'll keep growing. Pretty good. Pretty good. So, I think we feel all right. I think we feel all right. Although my one concern is the uranium mine is still paused. Let's unpause that. Oops. All right, good. And that brings us right back to 0 in perfect balance, as everything should be. Very cool. We've also really filled this in. I don't know if you can see the difference, but I certainly can. This is going to be awesome real estate for us in the coming episodes. And I'm feeling really good. I felt like we were blocked, on population here. I felt like we were constrained in our options a bit, and we fortunately are no longer. And so now we can start to think about, and let's even start researching it. I think what we'll end up doing next is microchip production and electronics 3, which the gold is right over here. So that's what this space is all for. Looking forward to it. And we're still getting some sausage. I think we can call this good. I think we have supplied everything we want to. So, right on, long one. Definitely cut out big chunks on this one, but I think this is the type of system that we needed to have in place. It's beefy, but seriously, this is like end game proof, or at least for a very, very, very long time. So feel good about it. I enjoyed myself. I hope that you did too. If you did, be sure to stop by again for the next one. Looking forward to finally getting Electronics 3, microchips, all that. But until then, have a good rest of your day, and bye-bye.